So over the past 5 years, I've sort of wrestled with two polarizing forces. One is my inherent desire and passion to want to make music and get better at it. But another is sort of this intruding monologue that pervades as I've been in my 30s, which is it too late to make music? Did I miss the boat? And is it even worth it to try to pursue this anymore? And so I think that because when I see people who come onto the music scene, a lot of times they're in their teens and they're in their 20s. And now that I'm in my 30s, I don't feel old by any stretch of the imagination, but it does feel older than sort of the average age of people who do music. But 6 months ago, I decided to say, screw that voice. I'm not going to listen to it. I'm going to choose passion. I'm going to choose to cultivate my music production in a genre that I've never done before, house music. And it has been 6 months, and to me, it has been absolutely worth it to bet on myself to do this. And so in this video, I just kind of want to explore that a bit, talk about my story and what I've learned so far on this journey. So I've always had a passion for music since I was probably 15 years old. I started with guitar, and even when I started guitar, I never really liked learning other people's music. I liked trying to create my own. And so that's what I did. And so I had a band in high school, and we would put out music, and we even played a few live shows. And that all sort of changed when I got into college because all the people in my band moved to different cities. And now that I was in college, I just didn't really have time to work on music. And that persisted because I ended up getting my graduate degree. So that was 7 years that I barely touched music. And even as I started working as a physical therapist, which is something that I still do for my day job, I still barely found time to do music. Well, then it kind of hit me, and I think a lot of people have this, where in COVID there was this resurgence of people, or rather this resurgence of creativity amongst people. During COVID, there was obviously a lot of downtime. I didn't have any downtime. I still had to work full time. But a lot of people had downtime, and so they were pursuing a lot of these creative things that they've sort of put on hold in the past. And so I did the same thing. In 2020, I decided I'm going to get back into music production because it had been, well, probably 15 years since I had done it. And so I got back into it, and I had just turned, I think, 29, 30 at the time. Yeah, 29. And I put effort into getting better at music production. And I did that for about 2 years. And after that point, I had that same creeping realization. Because while I was making progress in making music, my phone keeps going off. While I was having progress with making music still, it still felt like in the grand scheme of things, I wasn't making progress. Because deep down, and I think a lot of people have this, we want to make it big, right? We want to get recognition for the amount of work that we put into our creativity, for the work that we put out into the universe. And the funny thing is that I was actually getting recognition in my own way I had another YouTube channel where I was putting music up. But for the 2 years that I did that, from 2020 to 2022, in 2022, I decided that it wasn't enough progress for me. And so that voice that crept into my head of, oh, it's probably too late, you missed the boat, it's not worth working on this, I sort of gave it up. And decided to just pursue something else. And so that basically, I went on this lull for, 3 years where I didn't work on music again. And I focused on trying to learn things to just make money. And that was it. And all I can say is that for those 3 years that I spent doing that, of just trying to chase these skills just in order to make money, it was hollow. There was no substance to it because my heart wasn't in it. And that was very frustrating. And so in 2025, I sort of made this commitment to music again. And so I made a video and I put it on my channel. You can look at it if you want to. But I outlined goals that I had for this year, and I just bet on myself. And so I worked for the past 6 months to try to get better at music production in a genre that I had very little familiarity with, but a genre that I really loved, which is house music. And so I went and I just buckled down and I learned, and I've been putting out songs every single month, one song a month, and I'm continuing to do that for this year. And let me tell you something. This has been a fantastic choice, okay? Now, the reason why I feel like this journey has been worth it isn't because I'm making a lot of money from music. In fact, I'm making no money from music at the moment. But the reason why it is so worth it is because it is honestly just thrilling to see the growth that I have in this, right? So to see the song that I made in January, and I'll probably make another video talking about my progress with this in a little more detail, but to see the progress that I made from January to now, and it's June now, it's astounding. And it's very rewarding to just, well, to learn something that I'm just interested in. And I think that is really where people need to focus their efforts on. It's not, yes, there still is this thought in my head of, oh, I want to make it big. Obviously my I don't really outwardly say this very much because I don't really want to cast this out into the world for fear of failure, but I would love to play on an EDC stage at some point. That would be phenomenal. I don't like to outwardly say that much because I feel like it puts a lot of pressure on myself to try to achieve that goal. And I think that's one of the things that will always hold you back. And that's one of the things that I learned, is that when I embarked on this journey to try to learn music again, it was not for the sole reason to try to make it big, because that's not anything that I can control. But what I can control are process-oriented things. I can control how many songs I make in a year. I can control how many DJ sets I make. Those are things that I have complete autonomy over. And so when I started making music again this year, it was those actionable things that I started focusing on. And that makes it much more, at least for me, enjoyable and sustainable, because as long as I'm sort of reaching my attainable goals of making a song a month, and I'm not going to do that forever, but for this year I wanted to do that as really just a challenge for myself, because that goal is entirely within my control. Whether or not one of my songs ends up on a label, or whether or not my song ends up on a Spotify playlist, or I end up playing a festival somewhere, that is nothing that I can really directly control. But I can control the output that I have and the releases that I put out. And it's been really rewarding to do that. And I think that is sort of the mentality to gain, or the mentality to adopt if you want to have sustainability with learning music. So, I don't think that it's too late to learn music in your 30s. I don't think it's too late at all to get into music production in the 30s. In fact, I would argue that the progress that I've made in the past 6 months in terms of learning music production has probably been more than I've learned in the past 5 years. That could be a slight exaggeration, but I don't think it really is. Like, I've really been putting a lot of effort into trying to get better, to study how people are making their songs, and kind of using those elements to craft my own songs so that every song that I make is 5 to 10% better than the last song. And I think that's ultimately the best way to go. So anyway, if you're in, I don't exactly know who's watching this, but if you're in your 30s and you're sort of at this crossroads where you're like, you don't know if you want to start making music, or you feel like you're at this war with yourself where, yes, music is your passion, but you kind of have this notion of it's too late and why bother and is it even worth it? I'm going to say yes. And I'm not even going to say yes. I'm going to say fuck yes. It is absolutely worth it, because it just feels good to cultivate a skill that you're inherently passionate about. One of the things that I realized is that chasing those skills that I talked about before to make money, it was so hollow and it left me with no joy to do. But working on something that actually I'm passionate about it's just rewarding for the sake of it. And that's nice. I don't need my song to make it big in order to feel good about myself when I do make a song. Because the songs that I make, I actually enjoy listening to. I still listen to a lot of my songs because I like them. We should make things that we actually like ourselves. At the end of the day, you just need to start. As with anything, that is the hardest part. But age is not a barrier to making music. Like I said, I am making better music now than I have ever had at any previous point in my life. And I think that as we get older and into our 30s, and again, I don't think 30s are old at all, but I think society for some reason feels like it is. When you see all these videos of people like, oh my God, my 30s, like, ugh, life is over. I go to bed at 8:30 every night. That's a fucking choice. You can choose to do that or not. Now, I don't want to get into a tangent about that. But anyway, I say this because, every decade brings sort of a different experience of life. Like my 20s are far different than my 30s. And so with that, I can carry that into the songs I write. The songs that I wrote when I was a teenager in high school are nothing like the songs that I make. Now, I still have reverence for the songs that I made as in my teenage years, but there's just a different flavor that I bring with the songs that I make now. And I think that's really cool. So you don't even have to see making music in your 30s as a disadvantage. You can see it as an advantage because you also have a lot of life experience. So lyrically, you can write songs that have more meaning than if you just lived a life that had very few experiences, like a teenager doesn't have a ton of life experience at that point. I don't know if this video gave you any guidance or clarity whatsoever, but I guess all I'll say is that if you're wondering whether or not it's a good idea to start, it is a very good idea to start. And so I would recommend just opening your DAW and just starting a song. It probably sounds daunting right now if you haven't opened up your DAW in a while, or if you're just getting started. But let me tell you something. When you get that first song done, it's going to feel great. And then that will give you momentum to keep going and keep learning and keep getting better, because that's certainly what is fueling my fire to continue to get better each and every day. So I hope you found this to be helpful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.